Time to get funked up, baby, in TP Corleone's Funk Zone. Funky music, entertainment, media, and more. But all things are funky. Can you dig it now? What's good, my party people? This is TP Corleone. This is another episode of TP Corleone's Funk Zone. But this time, this particular show, usually you're used to me interviewing people that are like musicians, singers, DJs, actors, actresses. This is still entertainment related, but it's more on a serious and inspirational tip. You will see why in a second, but you will get something out of this. I promise you. I'm excited to have this guest on my show. She is an author, and I will also call a winner, a triumphant overcomer, an author of this book here, which is titled Memoirs from a Daughter of Crackheads. Let me repeat that again. The Memoirs from a Daughter of Crackheads, Stories of Childhood Trauma to Spiritual Triumph. I'll just read just a little about the back preview so you can get an idea of what we're about to delve into today. She says the 80s were perfectly imperfect. There was good music, fancy fashion, and drugs being flooded into every urban neighborhood in America. Crack, sometimes called rock, made its presence known in unimaginable ways, as we all do know that, especially for the children growing up during this time. Okay, the book is a collection of stories, childhood memories of growing up in heaven that became hell in a very short amount of time. Prepare to be taken on a journey through short stories about a young girl growing up and the experiences eventually that led to forgiveness, compassion, understanding, and a lifelong lesson in full love. This is Keisha Khanyal, the author of this book. Welcome, Keisha. How are you doing today?
Hello, I'm doing well. How are you doing today?
Good, good. That was a lot to even just take in what this book is about. I will admit I am in the middle of reading it right now. It's a very good read. It's a hard book to put down, but it's also a hard book to become, I guess, acquainted with spiritually or emotionally a little bit because of what you're talking about. But I can dig it because we all have been through or just seen different aspects of the whole crack situation, the crack epidemic back in the day, which we're still kind of living in the I guess the remnants of that today. Well, talk to me about what made you write this book. I'm curious about that. Let's get into it.
Absolutely. Well, what made me write the book? I wanted to heal. I was still grappling with some of the things that I experienced, and those things were affecting me in my everyday life, even with therapy. And, you know, we never know how our childhood experiences will manifest in our adult life. Also, I wrote the book so that I could help other people, other young people who are currently experiencing what I went through, who are going through it right now. I think it's important for people to know that they are not alone. Most people don't want to talk about it. I think it's important to talk about it and stop sweeping it under the rug so that we can help some of these people and start reshaping our generation as well as future generations. Um, get back on the right foot when it comes to this thing because it's affecting everybody, not just the people who abused drugs back in those days, but their children. And then we are now raising children in our generation. And I think it's important to get this out, get these things said, and get the healing going.
So it appears from listening to you that this book was mainly, well, a big part of it was therapy for you to continue to deal with this. Are you still in a healing process, or do you feel like you have healed already, or is it a lifelong challenge? What do you feel about that?
I think that anybody who experienced any of the things that I did will have an ongoing healing. It will never be over. You will always need to tap into whatever your spiritual beliefs are. You will need to tap into self love because, at least for me, I'm going to speak for myself on this point. You can be triggered by the smallest, most littlest thing. Um, and sometimes, depending on where you are here, that will determine how you handle and deal with that. So yeah, the book was super therapeutic. It helped me heal in a lot of ways, but it's never done. It's
Yeah.
never ever done. To this day, I still have post traumatic stress syndrome. I can't watch anybody abuse drugs without feeling nauseated or unwell.
Really?
Yeah, to this day. And so that's what I mean when I say it's always going to be, you deal with the emotional part of it, but there's still little bits and pieces of the past that creep into the present.
Mhm. Amazing. As I was reading it, I kind of was going back to some of my childhood experiences and understanding that and also raising kids myself currently. I became to understand that just like what you said, a lot of things you experience do come back to you
Mhm.
right now. And I was going back to many of my childhood experiences and the things that I thought were traumatic, I thought were major. And I was like, I'm not going to complain about anything. I ain't complaining about a damn thing anymore because this young lady, I don't know if I could have went through just one thing. Like for instance, the trip to Jack in the Box that never really happened. Things like that.
Mhm.
Or the your I don't know if he was your uncle, buddy, the guy in the wheelchair, that kind of thing. If just to grow through one day like that, I would have been
Mhm.
scarred maybe for life. I don't know if I'm as strong as you, girl. You know what I mean?
I do
So
know what you mean. I
yeah,
think that people never know how strong they are, honestly, until they're put in the position to be strong. I was just a little girl, experiencing those things. Sometimes I, look back on my life and go, dang, like I don't even know if I could do that today, but when you put
yeah,
in a position, you do what you gotta do.
yeah.
But I relate to what you're saying, and
Mhm.
it puts us in a position as parents. You said that you
Yes,
are parenting. It
yeah,
puts us in a position to look back to look forward, I guess, or to look
yeah,
into our present, really, because I know for me, I don't want my kids to experience or even come close to my experiences. So it's one of those things. The past affects the present, even in how I choose to parent. Like sometimes I feel like I do more harm than good trying to protect them from what I went through. Like,
wow,
my kids might be in a box a little bit.
yeah,
I'm afraid to let them be free a little
yeah,
because I want to protect them so much from my experiences. Even I have adult children, even my grown kids. I'm like, where you going? Where you doing? What do
right,
because I
right,
just so protective. I know what's out there. Been
yeah.
there,
You
saw it.
know.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know the traps, what's dressed up in glitter that's out to get you. You know all that. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And even
Exactly.
with, just like you say, even with adult kids that may feel they are worldly and because I'm grown, I can do this and that, but they don't see the traps. You experienced things that were pulled into unimaginable situations where at 11 years old, 10 years old, things like
Hmm.
that. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm sorry, children, but we kind of going to be a little overprotective a little bit, you know what I mean?
A little
Based on
bit.
what just a little bit, you know what I mean? Just a little bit. Now, has this the release of this book and actually just the experiences, have this had an effect on your, because many of the experiences you've went through were with people that were closest to you, such as parents and other relatives as well. Has this affected your current, I know it has affected them, but your current relationship with your parents or other relationships at this present day? How is that relationship now, currently?
um. Uh. So I wrote this book, and at the time that I wrote this book, I didn't have positive relationships with all of the characters in my story.
All right.
Currently, I have a very positive relationship with my father, and he was the only
Wonderful.
one who I was concerned about hurting. My
Wonderful.
daddy, as you read along, you will discover is and was my hero. Um,
Yes.
Drugs do a number on the best of people. And while my daddy is a fantastic human being and is completely healed from his addiction today,
Okay.
obviously I had a book to write. So there were
Yes.
things that I experienced. That being said, my relationship with him is fantastic.
Wow.
Um, I do not have a relationship with my mother. Um, and I'm going to write about that more in my next book. I kind of just wanted this book to be about my childhood experiences and what I went through. But in my next book, I'm going to talk about how, healing childhood trauma affects me today versus how it affected me in the past. And I'm going to touch on that a bit, but I don't have a positive relationship with her, as well as many of the other characters in my story, which put me in I have nothing to lose
Right. I got
kind
you.
of frame of mind as I wrote, because I wasn't fearful of hurting anybody at that point, um, except my daddy. Now today, after the book's published and it's out there for the world to read, I also know more information about some of the players in my story, and I do feel a little bit of a way, if I'm going to be honest. I know more about my characters that makes me want to embrace them and hold them, and I have empathy and compassion for them. Puts me in a weird position because my experiences are what they are. Like, you can't change them. So that's where the healing continues. That's where the journey continues. Where on one hand, I'm feeling compassion and love and empathy for the players in my story. And then on the other hand, anger and just frustration and sadness for where we sit today. I'm looking forward to seeing where this part of my journey leads.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, we're not going to give out too many spoilers, but I'm just happy that, at least with your dad, because he started out as a hero in the book early on. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
he still is a hero. I'm happy to hear that. I'm happy to hear that. Yeah, that's a wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And I mean, like, for instance, it's some things I still was just amazed about, as far as you went days without eating at some points, periods, right? It's days without eating as
Yeah.
a kid.
I did. I
Wow.
would go for days, with no parent around, or with an adult around, but who was you know the wrong kind of adult to be around a little girl. He was actually a drug dealer. We lived in his house.
Hmm.
Um, he was the only adult around, so that put me in very unique position. He was also not healthy, so he was crippled. So that put me in a position to now I have to fend for myself for food. I have to fend for, I have to, he's a drug dealer. He can't walk, can't even open the front door. So that made me a child drug dealer.
Yeah.
At a very early age, I'm the one who had to greet the people, find out what they wanted, what they needed, take it back to the drug. It put me in a very, very unique situation as a child. So um, hunger was huge. And I think that, you know, I think it's huge for a lot of us kids who are growing up. You got to remember, we had a parent one day.
Yeah.
The next day, we didn't have a parent. That's how quick
Just like that.
it's just like that. And so the opportunity to eat was major. And I think that the trauma that creates in us as a kid and how that relates to us as adults, and me specifically, it creates obesity, because sometimes when you get food, you eat and you eat and you eat,
Mm.
because when you're a kid, you didn't know when you were going to get your next meal. I think that, that's one of the things that has to be looked at when we're dealing with obesity. Like, okay, like, what trauma is this person dealing with? You know, um, that's creating this health deficit. What's happening in here that's causing some of the trauma that's happening in their lives today? And that's one of them. That's a huge one. I spent a lot of years heavy and very obese, mostly because when I got to a place where I could eat when I wanted to, I did. I just ate. I ate and ate and ate, especially when I was younger. As you'll read along, my aunt actually took over the care for me, and when I got in her care, things looked up, but things changed for me health wise too. And so childhood hunger is huge today.
Yeah.
It's huge today. And there's these No Child Left Behind. And even now in the summer where, sometimes during school is a child's only meal. Except
Yeah.
for me, I wasn't even going to school.
Mm-hmm.
So I worry about the children of today and how they're eating, what they're eating, where they're getting their meals from, because I had to do some unique things to get food.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. My wife is a teacher. My wife is a teacher, and you made me think of some of the stories she would tell me how, because she teaches in the hood, and a lot of kids are just going to school just to eat. The parents kick them out of the house just to go to school to get a meal, and they don't care what they're doing in the streets. They're just getting a meal. You know what I mean? So uh,
Yeah.
I understand. I understand. Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah.
So the music part. I'm curious about. Now you had mentioned that Prince. You talked about how you liked Michael Jackson when you were a girl. He was like your favorite until your mom took you to see Purple Rain. It's amazing because I'm a big Prince and Michael Jackson fan, and too. Most people our age group are. You know what I mean? And but when Prince and Michael passed, that had a strong impact on my life, but not in the same way that it had on yours. And so I was kind of very aware. That made me aware of how different situations, and we can we can experience certain things from different perspectives. When Prince passed, it changed my life in a certain way that I can't really explain right now. But I see when he passed in your life, it was heavy because that has something to do with your connection with your mom, the small little positive connection you did have with your mom. Talk to me about that a little bit, if you don't mind at all.
Absolutely. I wasn't initially a Prince fan. As a little girl, I loved Michael Jackson so
Yeah,
much, just like many of the other girls who
yeah,
were my age. I had a wall covered. I had all my walls covered in Michael Jackson posters. I watched the making of Thriller a million
really,
times.
really, yeah. I remember that. Yeah, the
And
VHS, right? It was on VHS, right?
oh man, it would come on like HBO.
Yeah, that's right. It sure would. Yeah.
If
Well, I
you were
remember
good
my
enough
homies
to
back in
have
the day.
cable.
Yeah, yeah, I remember.
When I was a kid, I was, I'd say BC, before crack, before the drugs. We were pretty good and pretty well off. And we were one of those families that had cable in our house. And so I would watch that thing every time it came on. I would watch that Michael Jackson, making a Thriller. I enjoyed it so much. But then, as, crack came on the scene, it was always a battle between Prince and Michael Jackson, really, back in those days.
Yeah.
But Prince came out with Movie, like literally in the
Right.
midst of the crack epidemic.
Sure did.
Rain, like right in the middle of it. And I had no desire to see the movie, honestly. My dad at this time was not a drug addict. My mother became a drug addict before him, and my father moved on and remarried. And so I was living with him and my stepmom at this time. And my mom had reached out and said she wanted to see me and take me to see this movie. And so I went with her to see this movie. It was an adventure. I'll let y'all read about it, but it was quite the adventure. And but because of that adventure and because of where I was with my mother at that time, I hadn't seen her in a really long time. She was pretty far gone at this stage. I was uncomfortable with her because so much had happened to me already at that point. And, I unfortunately connected my mother to drug addiction and Prince.
Wow.
So when he passed away, and it was of an opioid addiction,
Yeah.
I was floored. I cried like a baby. And then on top of that, I had literally just written the stories.
Okay.
So it was like I written the story about him and my mother and my connection, and literally like a week and a half later, he passed away.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So that was what, 2016. So
and that devastated me.
Yeah.
I was so devastated.
Yeah.
When I tell you I was devastated, I was devastated. Mm-hmm. And by the time I wrote the second story, it was mostly because I didn't want to leave that first story as was. I couldn't just leave it on that note. I was just so sad, like
You have to go back and tweak it a little bit.
I had to write a whole second story.
Oh, okay. That's what happened. That's what happened.
Because I didn't want to leave with that first story like it was.
Mm-hmm. I got you. And then how you said the way he passed from opioid overdose, Yeah, I'm sorry, but yeah.
That one it was just as painful as it gets. It was like I knew him personally.
Yeah, I understand.
It was like, and it was a secret too. Nobody knew, that he had, none of us on the outside, of course, the spectators on the outside just know Prince, the genius, yeah.
Okay.
And so, because you'll read that story and you'll read the end of it, and I actually added a little excerpt at the end of it. Yeah, and then I wrote a secondary story, a happier story about Prince.
All right, well, I can't wait to get to that part. Because right now I'm like, oh, it's so dark. The book is so dark. When I read the first two short stories, to me, I said, I feel like I watched a whole season of The Wire in like 15 minutes. You know what I mean? Just through those first couple of stories, it was like the first two seasons of The Wire or something like that. It was just that heavy,
Yeah. I haven't even seen that show.
Really?
But I watch shows like Snowfall, and I watch.
Oh yeah, you do? Okay.
Yeah, and I've heard, I've seen a lot of comparison between The Wire and Snowfall, so I do want to get into it. But you know something? I get frustrated watching those shows. I enjoy Snowfall because it's so close to real life. It's like John Singleton, who created that show. He lived in, LA and watched everything happen. So it's real,
Mm-hmm.
It's almost too real. The first season of that show, I used to have to turn it off sometimes. Like, okay, like this is a little too much for me because it's too much of a reminder of my experience. But you know something? As good as that show is, and as much as I love it and I watch it, I get tired sometimes of watching these drug dealers get glorified while all these kids out here still, grappling with their trauma. And it's not talked about enough, in my opinion. Like, the child's experience of that era to me is so forgotten, lost in the drug dealer who's like, I got my chains and I sold this much drugs and that much drugs, and I went to jail. And we see TV shows, all of movies, all about it. Nino Brown, we see all of that, we even hear about the abusers, in movies about abusers, but we hardly ever, ever, ever talk about the children who survived that time or who didn't survive that time.
Amazing. That's a great point you just made. That's very, very great, and I never really would have saw that until you just mentioned it to me, but I always did say though, as far as our community goes, do we need another one of those type of films or TV shows? I mean, as far as the glorification of drug dealers. Now, don't get me wrong, like any person, I'm entertained by them, gangster films, drug dealing films, they are entertaining. Let's not front like they aren't entertaining, but here it is, 2021. The first movie like that was Superfly, which is one of my favorite films, came out in 1972.
I wasn't even born yet.
Exactly. You say what? We say what?
I wasn't even born yet.
Exactly. There you go. So dig this. Are we going to get past that though? You know what I mean? As I'm not trying to preach now, nothing like that, but as like artists or musicians, filmmakers, know what I'm saying? I mean, and just like you said, that part is glorified, the trauma part, as far as the victims, that they are victims here, and the victims aren't just the abusers, but I think it's because Hollywood, Hollywood, or not just Hollywood, but just the industry itself, the entertainment industry, they want something that's easy to digest. You know what I'm saying? And nobody want to feel any kind of accountability.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? No
Yes, that's the
accountability.
word.
Because I hate to say it, even with us being entertained by it and don't demand any other perspectives is also a form of compliance. You did what I'm saying, of this
Yes.
continuing on. At least let there be a balance, because again, until I met you and got into this book, I never even imagined that part of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There are, I mean, every household that has a drug addict, at least one has some innocent victims, some children who are going to school, not taking care of the hygiene, um,
Yeah.
bad clothes, you know what I'm saying? Embarrassed in front of their friends, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Or embarrassed by friends who may have maybe being taken care of by ballers, you know what I'm saying? That are on the other opposite spectrum of that whole dynamic. You dig what I'm saying? That got
Yes.
freshest clothes, you know what I'm saying? That kind of thing. So that's deep. That's very, very deep. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah, but you can
Yeah.
talk to me about it better than I can. I'm just for real.
Accountability is such a, that's the word.
Yeah.
I think that it's really difficult for people to be accountable for the downside,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes to the kids. It's
Mm-hmm.
really hard. And you can just, even with my book itself, um, I get nothing but positive feedback. 99% of the feedback that I get from my book is positive. But you know what? That 1% of negative is usually people who are comfortable with sweeping things under the rug. It's like we are expected to protect our abusers.
Really? Yes.
And well, yeah, because okay, we're gonna call it what it is, right? The book is out there, so it is what it is, right? So we're just
Uh-huh.
gonna call it what it is. We were abused
Mm-hmm.
by our parents who either didn't provide our needs, our necessities, whether that was basic needs of food, clothing, hot water, the ability to shower, clothing, clean clothing,
Yeah.
fitting clothing. So we were abused, but then some of us were abused even further. So sexual abuse, physical abuse, you name it, all kinds of abuse, right? And then we get older, and then, we're raised a certain way, especially if you were raised in the church. So you're raised to honor your mother and your father. So if you survive, you're sitting with all this trauma that you went through, all this pain, all this frustration, all this abuse, all of your needs not met, um, lack of tools to even survive sometimes as an adult because you're literally winging it out here, right? You're winging it because you weren't raised, right? And then you're holding it all in because you gotta honor your mother and your father. You gotta be respectful. You gotta, and so you're walking around with this ball of just pain and anger, and we're like literally protecting those that hurt us most, the people that were supposed to protect us,
Yeah.
and for whatever reason didn't, whether it was the drugs or whatever the case may be, we weren't protected. And it's like we walk around. That's why the feedback that I get, especially from people who survived like I did, it's like, thank God somebody had the courage to tell the story, because it's hard to break free and have that courage, because in the back of your mind it's always, I'm hurting people. This book has been written for years and it's only taken me now to actually publish it, all because it's like, I'm gonna hurt people because
Okay.
these are my loved ones, but then we're hurt because we went through that, and what do you do with that?
Wow.
You do with that. And can you imagine how many other children are out there who are trying to manage that and not knowing what to do? Like, wanting to honor their mom, wanting to honor their dad, and or other family members and friends or whoever all was involved in the story. But at the same time, angry, mad, sad that they even went through it or still may be going through it. It's like, what do you do with that?
Whoa. So you basically saying that abuse is swept under the rug by family members, by society in general. You know, those who know the abuse is going on just will turn a blind eye to it, basically is what you say.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct. Even once some of them, got better, or like for me in my particular story, my grandmother never abused drugs, but knew what my environment was and knew what I was going through. Um, Especially our elders have that sweep it under the rug mentality. A lot of them were abused. It's kind of a
Yep.
cycle, you know?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
That's sad. You know, I think that's kind of prominent in our community. You know, that happens with many different types of abuse. The elders want to uphold this. You know, oh, she can't do that. He wouldn't have done that. She wouldn't have done that. You know, that's your mama. That's your dad. That's your uncle. That's your grand. They wouldn't have did that. You know, or no, it's okay. But that's wild. You know, and I've seen it from a bird's eye view. I've seen people go through that, you know, a little bit, but
Hmm.
I've never known them that close to really. The closest I've ever got to even speak about that to somebody that has been through it is you right now at this moment, you know, because you see somebody that you may suspect of going through it, but then you hope to never see him again because then you might have to call the police. Do I want to get involved in that? That's sad. I gotta admit it. That's sad. You
Yeah.
know, I've been there too. You know, and just messing up he messing up my head of things I may have seen and just ignored. So well, I
But
gotta
you know something?
God,
Don't
thank
let it
you.
don't let it mess up your head.
Yeah,
Instead, let it propel you to action. Because it's going on.
yeah.
It's going on. And so let it put you in a position of how can I help now? Because
Okay,
that's what it did
okay.
for me. I started a nonprofit called Journey to Wellbeing. I knew I wanted to help people even when I was just an adult teen, 18, 19 years old. I already had a dream back then. I'm like, I know what I want to do. I want to help young people. I want to help kids who can't even focus on their education because they're focused on what they're wearing that day. I used to want an Adidas jacket so bad, like
Yeah, yeah.
a
Wow.
satin a jacket with the Adidas sign on the back. There was
Oh,
no way I was.
right. Oh, that was a fantasy to own that for you, huh?
Oh yeah, I wanted that
Yeah.
so desperately, and my classmates all had it, and I got my clothes from wherever I could get my clothes. I just always wanted a place where kids can come and be expressive and get name brand new things to wear and have a stage for them. So I always wanted to be a singer. So I
Really?
always wanted to provide for other
Okay.
people all the things that I wanted and needed, whether it
Yeah.
was laundry soap and deodorant to underwear, or a place to be yourself, to sing or dance or do spoken word or play sports or whatever it is that makes you happy, so that you can focus on those things instead of what this person's going to say about your hair today if you make it to school, or you know what your shoes look like, or if you're wearing Pro Wings was the
Mhm.
worst back in my day.
Yeah, yeah.
Payless Shoe Source, it was what I had those. So thing is, as I was spending so much time focused on what I didn't have,
Mhm.
that I wasn't focused on education at all. And I think that's the downside too. People always say you got to keep, grades, 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 grades. But what's the flip side to people not getting good grades? What's happening at home?
Right.
What's happened? You never know. Just because of my experience, I know now that it's not just as simple as study, study, study. Do they have lights at home? Can they
Yeah.
turn on the lights? Can they see? You know?
Yeah. 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 Whoa. So you're not for profit. It helps children be involved in things to take them away from those type of experiences. Is that what you're saying? Is that what
Well,
you're?
that's the goal.
That's the goal. Okay.
That's definitely the goal. Like right now, what I'm doing is it's two-sided. I'm also a breast cancer survivor. And
Oh.
so I the one side of it helps with resources for people within our community. One thing that I notice is when it comes to healthcare and people of color, we struggle to get our needs met, and especially as women. So one side of it is to help people of color with resources and things they need. The other side of it is to help the youth. So with clothing, like we did a laundry drive, where we gave out bales of laundry, soap, and $25 card so that they could
Wonderful.
wash their clothes,
Yeah.
because I know that's what I needed.
Yeah.
I didn't have the best, but what I did have was dirty, and I didn't have the means to put. So just knowing what I know and knowing what people need, you got to start somewhere. But yeah, eventually the goal is a big old center where kids can just be free, and comfortable, and have counseling on site, mentors, I think that the biggest, I have a mentor. I'm highly grateful. I didn't even know how important mentorship was. I think every youth needs one,
Mhm.
someone that maybe is doing what they may want to do, in their future, in their life, so they could see how it's done, how they got to where they got, and show them the ropes. I got a mentor and I'm in my 40s. It took me this long.
Whoa. Well, hey, well, you know what? You're never too old to have help. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And God sent your mentor to you. I'm glad to have one. Really, really
Yes.
glad. And I think you will get that far as what goes for your non-for-profit. I know you will get it because already from where you have came from till now is an amazing journey. It's a big giant step, but I am so impressed. I am so impressed. I know you're not here to impress me. You're just on my show as a guest, but I am so impressed, and it's heartwarming too. You know what I mean?
Oh, I
Yeah,
appreciate that. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
yeah,
And
mhm.
I'm hoping that you're right.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you've touched me, especially when you mentioned that how people have looked the other way when they see things going on, abuse with, the drugs may have influenced the abuse of other things may have influenced the abuse, and you just, I'll just say a prayer, God bless them, keep it moving. That's not how you do it. That's not, you could have saved a life or done many things, you know what I'm saying? So that's why you have the mentor in your life. I am just, this is very educational for me. You know what I'm saying? Really,
Aw,
this is educational for me. So that's
yeah.
heavy. That's heavy, you know?
I mean, having me on your show is super helpful. Like, not
Yeah,
everybody has what it takes to be on the front lines. You got to use what you got, So that's what I try to do. I use
yeah.
what I've got. So even though you say a prayer and keep it moving, this right
Mhm.
here, what we're doing right now, yeah, this is huge
Okay, well, thank
because this is helping.
Yes, and
This is
people
helping.
will see it. Yeah, we're going to be sure people see this. And we're going to be sure they get this book. So, how can they purchase it? Where's the book on sale at?
This book is on sale at every online retailer. So you can get it on Amazon. You can get it at Barnes and Noble. You can get it on Walmart. You can get it on Apple Books. Actually, on my website, you can get it if you want a signed copy. I'll send you a signed copy on journeytowellbeing.org, and I'll get you one signed along with a free gift. You can message me if you have any questions. I'll send you the book for free if you really want to read my book, because I just think it's that important, um, especially if you're a youth or a young person. I think it's important. It's not just a book of trauma. And when you get to the end, you get to the triumph. And I just need every young person or every person just like me who went through it to know that there is a triumph if you want
This sounds more like a ministry. You know,
it.
sounds like a ministry.
Yeah,
All ministries are in the pulpit. You know what I mean? So
correct.
that is so heavy. A well needed ministry at that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's heavy. That is so heavy. And also, I'm gonna say one or two things to wrap it up though. But based on some things we touched on earlier, it's kind of like your experiences, believe it or not, and by writing this book, your experiences that led you to write this book kind of created, by writing the book, kind of created a unique lane in, I guess, in media, in print media, that hasn't really been touched on, and you may be opening a lot of doors for yourself you may not even realize right now, or you may already be aware of it. I'm not sure, as far as the perspective of the victims and children of the whole crack thing. And what made me want to touch on that even more is because we were talking about the music aspect, and earlier you were talking about how entertainment has glorified, the drug dealer and things like that. Well, I saw a post once somebody put on Instagram, and this young lady may have been like in her like maybe mid 30s, and she was like, "Yeah, back in my day, we listened to drug dealing music. Now our fools listening to drug taking music. You know what I mean? Y'all
Oh,
fiends are y'all music encouraging y'all to be fiends. We was just trying to get paid. That's all back in my day with the music we was listening. That was her take on it, and that always stuck with me because it was kind of funny and humorous, but true. So now it's like the game is encouraging and enabling you to feel good about being a dope fiend. Is that what's happening? Is
oh
that
my
what's really happening?
gosh.
Think about that. Think about that. You know what I'm saying? Your purpose sex, your mollies. I can't turn if I have my kid in the car,
Mm-mm.
even the clean stations, the clean versions of these songs, I have to turn to Caucasian radio station to find music that's not glorifying abusing dope, abusing drugs. You know what I'm saying? And it is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I ain't trying to preach because we all trying to get a bag, you know what I'm saying? And we all have been in, but certain things should at least be for adults. Certain things should be for kids. But when you got sing-songy lyrics, sing-songy melodies to songs about taking dope, it's like we almost lost. So again, this
It's
just
depressing.
yeah, it's depressing. And this,
It's so depressing and it's a disappointment because yeah, I don't want to turn on the radio and hear it either.
okay,
And I
okay,
talk about it a lot on my social media, on my social media pages too, about how, we're turning on we're hearing about cooking up crack cocaine and baking soda. And it's like my kids get an instructional now. and
yes, yes, they do for
it's,
free.
oh my goodness. It's like, are you kidding me?
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
And it's disappointing for me because I'm thinking like the people who are making this music certainly are, people from my generation. Like, whoa, you guys, like, what are we doing here? Like,
Well, their
this is
souls are
not
already
cool.
sold. But their souls are already sold. But the fact that you would do that, you just sold your soul. You're selling your soul is not signing your name in blood. You're selling your soul is what you choose to do. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, you're
and,
right. And as far as the drug music from back in the day, as you know, I have a playlist that I put together with all of the music that influenced my book.
mhm.
Songs that are actually directly referenced in my book are on that playlist. And when I listen to it often because it's good music, period. It's just really good music.
Yeah,
But, yeah, you can hear that. I can hear what you're saying there, where a lot of it is people who listen to it while they made their money, completely different than instructionals on how to make crack cocaine.
yes, yes. How to make it, how to cook it up. Yep. Kids need
Blows me away.
yeah. So I don't want to, I could go a whole nother hour on that. I won't. But I just brought that up to say this is just a total side of that, the total opposite extreme again. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I said this creates a whole new lane. And hopefully it opens doors and influence others to take that kind of approach from that point of view as well. So I'm real impressed with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate
Problem.
that.
No problem, Keisha. Well, thanks again for your time. I'm going to put the links to your site and everything in the info under the video, and we'll share it with everybody. Hopefully, they get something out of it. I'm sure they will subscribe to the channel and everything. Keep doing what you're doing and stay in touch, okay?
I will. I promise. Thank you so much.
No problem. Peace and love, my sister. Thanks again. Keep up the
All
good work.
right.
All
Bye
right. That's
bye.
what's up. Bye bye.